When dealing with a falsehood, you're faced with two options. You can accept it or you can reject it. The basis upon which we take one of these actions is a product of our critical thinking capabilities and a desire to know what is true instead of confirming our bias. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. On Brainstorm, we choose the hard truths over the comforting lies. Reason, compassion, skepticism. This is the Brainstorm Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Brainstorm Rectable. Rectable?
Rectable.
What?
Rectangle. Table.
Rectum table.
What?
It was the round table, but then I asked
Think tank,
listeners
brain trust.
to give us a name idea, and Jeremiah Traeger came up with Rectable.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
So far that's what we're calling it.
We may have to work on
We
the
might switch it to
enunciation.
Think Tank because I kind of like that better.
The think tank.
But
The think tank.
I like rectum table.
Do you?
The rectangle think tank.
Is that a physicist thing?
Does it
Maybe.
remind you of work at all?
Kind of, yes.
Oh, okay.
I look
rectum
at
table?
so many rectums all damn day.
That's what I mean.
Rectum,
More
rectum,
just a pain in the
penis.
ass.
Not kidding.
Rectum, penis.
you live at the rectum table.
Technically, you eat because of the rectum table.
Yeah.
Yes. If you were to say grace, you'd be like,
Rectable,
I
damn
think we
near
made it
rectum.
leave it at
dear,
that.
no?
We truly appreciate your input, Jeremiah. Just we're all soulless.
I like rectable. I think it's clever. But do we want to be in the gutter already? Like,
We've already
When we
been there
start-
so many times.
yeah.
We have a problem.
We're living in the gutter, but we're staring at the stars.
Whatever
Wait, leave your microphone alone.
whatever we call it. This is the segment where we discuss a subject or whatever comes to mind.
Cool.
So how is that different? Whatever comes to
This
mind is
is
sort of
more. I'm trying
I've heard
less
that as a
hard
pickup
to
time
control
line a
this
few times.
conversation.
Than you would normally?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what this is.
So why don't we just call it the Cory gives up control?
Yeah, that's right. So
It's the free fall segment. Whee!
Free fall.
yeah. So I'm Cory, and I'm still joined by Rene,
Hello.
Brandon,
Hello.
Angela,
Hello.
and Lisa,
Hi.
with the always amazing Dave doing sound.
Very amazing tonight.
You bet. We
Not
are.
raging
Yeah, you are.
anymore.
No more raging.
That's right. No more raging. We are in Roman Empire Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan, and today is April 13th, 2018. I had an idea for a discussion about talking about ideas versus talking about people, because a criticism that I've seen come up from a few people is that we spend too much time talking about the certain people or certain actions that individuals do, or just we focus too much on people and not enough on ideas. So I wonder, is this a problem that as you guys see it, or can you even separate ideas from the people who spread those ideas?
Yes and no. The problem is the medium through which you transmit an idea almost indelibly leaves a mark on the idea. The medium is the message, to crib a line.
Fair enough.
I think that people who spread ideas are people that we don't necessarily know personally. If our racist uncle is at the dinner table and he's spouting off about Alex Jones or something like that, we're gonna be like, "Oh, Uncle, blah blah blah,
Bob.
stop it! Just bury your face in some mashed potatoes. Come on." And then we're still gonna, care about him as a human being and be like, "So, sports sports, or weather, or something like that.
Or we hire Nancy.
Or we hire Nancy. Yeah.
I think sometimes it depends. Like, I mean, it's that kind of thing of, can you separate the art from the artist?
Right.
You know, and like sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. Like, you know, and I think it's the same thing with the ideas. Sometimes you can separate the idea from the person, and sometimes you can't.
Sometimes, yeah. I think there's something to that. Like
no matter what, Ted Nugent is an asshole.
right. And Deepak Chopra is full of shit.
Yeah,
Like-
I mean,
And so is the difference kind of like the person makes their living doing this thing to some degree?
You could say whether or not how intrinsic the person is to the message. That would be the cheat, essentially, for if you're talking about a scientist or something who's advocating a controversial yet sound hypothesis, as opposed to a scientist who's a douchebag who's still right about what he's bringing forth.
There's a lot of those. When you got this feedback, was there any specific people or ideas that we were not focusing on? Was it surrounding any specific
I don't think so.
episode, or-
I think it was just general, like not even specific to us, like just people.
Oh.
Like the atheist movement has a tendency now to focus on people, or skeptic movement has a tendency to focus on the people rather than the ideas that they.
I don't know if that's true.
No?
No.
I think that's true for everybody.
I think
think
that's
it
true
is.
for everybody.
Yeah, that's just
Maybe,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, I mean,
society.
the atheist movement rejects religion, which is not a person and an idea, and I mean God, which is, I guess, arguably not a person but an idea, and many other, I don't know, non-evidence based belief systems, and the idea of not, you know, whatever, jumping on every anecdotal evidence anyone. I mean, the atheist movement's got to be better than most lines of, I don't know, most movements, whatever.
One would almost hope.
I just inherently, just based on what, I don't know.
I think like what we were saying previously about, you know, that it depends on the situation. Like, for example, my husband has very specific beliefs about ketchup application. Like burgers and fries is the only situation in which you need ketchup. Don't put it on your KD.
What?
Yeah, it's like, it's very specific, and
It's not a very versatile condiment, if that's.
Well, and this is what I think, but I still love the shit out of him and enjoy spending time with him. But he just has very specific beliefs
wrong.
about ketchup.
Wrong.
I mean,
Very
to him, it's
wrong.
right. But on the other hand, ideas like the extreme version would be if you believe that white people are supreme and people of color don't deserve to exist, or, you know, LGBT people do not deserve to exist. Those kinds of things. I think the more extreme ideas, that I think it seems like that would be more warranted, that we would just be able to identify that idea with the person.
So,
And then, okay,
Yeah.
that person, it seems
I
kind
don't know.
of extreme.
I think there is a point where, I mean, if we all take the breath and we really wanted to do it, we can separate the idea, but no one does. I mean,
like,
we've made this joke constantly about, you know, Lisa loves Sam Harris. We mock the shit out of Sam Harris.
Yeah.
You know,
Fucking love Sam Harris.
Sam Harris loves Sam Harris too.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
He really is into himself.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't
Sam
know.
Harris loves Sam Harris? Yeah.
I think Sam Harris does love Sam Harris, but I don't know that he's like any more so than any other douchey white guy out there. Like, fuck you all.
No, I mean, I think it's definitely like,
A little bit
You
beyond
love
the
Joe
pale.
Rogan. Joe Rogan is anyone but Joe Rogan more than Joe Rogan. I mean,
No, that's true too. Joe Rogan
super
does.
into
I mean, I think that goes to people that, you know, are successful doing that kind of stuff. Yeah, but
it's a man.
I
thing,
don't
let's be
think
honest.
it's quite the same thing as, you know, I think Sam Harris takes a look at his IQ score and jerks off. But
he listens to his own podcast and jerks off. And then he falls asleep to his own podcast.
How's that mental image, Lisa?
Fucking love falling asleep to Sam Harris's voice. I do the same fucking things.
I will say this: he does have a very soothing voice.
Fucking love his voice. Thank you.
Well,
Coma-inducing.
yeah, he's got a coma-inducing voice.
He's very engaging.
At 2 a.m, I'll throw his
Right, because it'll cure that
on there.
insomnia.
But you know what?
just like
As much as I mock Sam
I'm the only one
Harris,
who loves Sam Harris.
as much as I mock Sam Harris, every once in a while, I'll find myself going, "Fuck, he's right."
Wow.
Well, and that's the other thing too.
He's actually smart. Like,
But even smart people have biases. Even smart people have their blind spots, right?
True.
And we can't
Except
put
me.
except you. You
Except
are the
underneath the ref
exception.
table.
and my boyfriend's Sam Harris. No, I'm kidding.
Yes. I don't think we should be putting people on pedestals necessarily.
No,
and
absolutely.
saying like, oh, well, that guy that's on the pedestal, he believes that this or that, and so he can stay on his pedestal. He's cool, but this guy that's standing at my level is a fucking idiot because.
I think you've really hit the nail on the head here. I mean, I was younger. I was like, okay, I don't know what to think about this issue. I'm going to look up what so-and-so thinks of this issue because what they think is what I'm going to think because that, I've agreed with everything. They've said smart things before. I agree with that. Them latch onto that, right?
Yep.
And now I think of it, like, I think it's so much better to go at things from a issue by issue basis. And I sometimes, not often, but sometimes don't agree with things Sam Harris says. And I'm like, that's
Hold the
okay.
phone.
I know. And that's okay. It's okay. I just still love him.
In every
I was gonna ask
relationship,
if
there
you
will
love
be
him.
disagreements.
I was going to ask if you marked growing up by I'm going to go with so and so, and it just all matured to just being Sam Harris.
Back in
Then
the
you
day, it
Google for
wasn't
your
Sam Harris
opinion.
because I am old enough. When I was younger, Sam Harris was not a
wasn't a thing.
Well, I'm sure he existed, but he was not a prominent public figure.
You're saying you had to wait till you were 15 to get a
And the
poster?
only
I had to wait
example
till
I
no.
have-
You think I'm way younger than I am? No, I think End of Faith came out when I was in grad school. So
I was an adult when End of Faith came out.
When I was a teenager, I was so much more into Lois and Clark when I thought that Dean Cain might be a Christian. There was a rumor out there. I was like, holy shit, I'm going to watch that show now. And
he was a hot man. That was
It was because he was a Christian.
Yeah.
So, of course,
Okay.
I'm going to support the people that think the same things as me.
I think that's funny. That's a surprising thing to hear.
Why? Why is it surprising?
That not particular whole
Dean
nugget.
Cain and Lois and Clark?
That Dean
or?
Cain being a Christian thing. It's considering the average.
He actually is. He's been in like a few Christian movies.
Yeah, I believe he is. What about and Hercules? What's his name?
Kevin
Kevin
Sorbo.
Sorbo.
That guy.
Hercules.
Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy.
Seriously.
Wouldn't you have loved him?
I didn't.
Would you have
know what?
back in the
back in the day when there was Xena, Sinbad, and Hercules on Saturdays. It was Sinbad with a bullet. Like,
What about young Hercules?
You mean Ryan Gosling?
Yeah.
nope.
Or is it Reynolds?
wasn't-
I can't.
No, that was
That was
Gosling.
after, I think that was after my
Which
time.
one is it?
I don't know. They're the same person to
That-
me.
that-
It literally wasn't until like last year that I realized they are two separate people, and like there's like different movies that they're both. Like I can't. What's wrong with me? I don't know. I'm like racist towards like white blonde Canadian guys. Like I don't know.
So when Deadpool came out, Lisa realized that Ryan Gosling had a really dark face.
When Deadpool came out, I was like, whoa. Young Hercules is really looking kind of buff in this. Like, it's really weird. Like, holy fuck. And it really took me that. I'm serious.
Wait, back up. Does Young Hercules have Ryan Gosling in it?
Yes.
This is an old TV show?
Yes.
Oh my god, that'd be funny.
It's fucking amazing.
I gotta
was
watch
after
this.
He
my
does
time.
not fill the vest nearly as well as Kevin Sorbo did.
But he's young.
Sorbo, I don't know. Like that was such a caricature. I mean, all of those shows were pretty
Yes.
terrible. They were low budge, and Xena was totally a lesbian. She was such a lesbian.
So,
I'm not saying that was a bad thing.
aha. That's very 90s too.
You know,
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
they don't make shows like this anymore, really. I can't think of anything.
Like the
kitsch.
superheroes? No.
Well, just a really cheesy, low production, action thing.
Have you
like,
seen Ash versus the Evil Dead?
Well, yeah, but that's meant to be funny, though.
Yeah,
right?
that's hilarious.
That's not.
I would say some of the later seasons of Xena and Hercules kind of stopped giving too much of a shit.
Yeah, they
that's
didn't
true.
after a while.
They grew into their role.
Yeah.
It's like this. No one's taking us seriously anymore.
But
We're going to have a disco episode.
I mean, if you bring up Kevin Sorbo, I mean, that's another case. Can you separate
Hercules from what he does now?
God's not dead.
Yeah, well, that's what I was meaning. Is I never thought he was a great actor, but it's like I've seen Andromeda, I didn't hate it, but now I watch it and go, "Oh, he's the born again Christian asshole." You know.
So, can I just point out that in this discussion about whether we talk about people too much more than ideas, we've devolved into talking about people.
Yeah.
Can I just point this out?
But I mean, but then again, but mind you, that's part of the problem, right? Is like when we're talking about ideas, we have to go straight into specific ideas. That's not nearly as much fun, you know. But because then with those ideas, you have to stick on those specific
well, and then
things.
The thing is, certain people have articulated certain arguments and ideas, and it kind of sticks in your brain. The thing is, we are social animals. That's what we are. I mean, if you read one of my, *Sapiens*, one of my favorite books from last year, about how we need gossip. Like we are that. I mean, we have so much of what we do as humans has evolved because of our desire to gossip. And this is natural. This is how we learn. This is how our freaking primate brains work. What do you want? Like.
I find myself very fascinated by what motivates people and what brings people to think what they currently think or act how they currently act. That's something that fascinates me.
Well, there's a book I want to read by a guy.
Most books
I probably
are by
have
people.
it. I don't know. No, maybe
You're
not.
going to have to narrow it down.
You're way smarter than me. The other thing
Are you
I wanted
talking to Brandon?
No.
No.
I'm talking to you, Lisa.
I was going to say no. I highly doubt that.
You're officially one of us. Burn.
So burnt. That's mean.
I'm French. That's what I do.
This isn't totally a diversion from the topic, separating people from ideas, but what Bill Clinton did with Monica Lewinsky.
I thought you were going to leave it there for a second.
We didn't so much vilify Clinton as we vilified Lewinsky.
Yeah, that
She did get roasted for it.
She was the first person to essentially get crucified on the internet, basically.
I have to admit, I wasn't old enough to be cogent of the whole thing. I wasn't really paying enough attention.
But my understanding of Clinton subsequently is that he's not really that bad of a dude. And people are just like, yeah, whatever, the Clintons. Yeah, conservative people would disagree with that. But
even them, they hate on Hillary way more than they hate on Bill.
Yeah.
They've really picked their target on that side of things.
There is a bit of an undertone of it's to kind of make it really weird. Consider the difference if a female teacher is caught molesting a younger student, and a younger male student, versus
I mean, like half of them in Florida,
versus a male teacher molesting a female student.
Right.
Almost.
Hey, look at the news.
Almost. I don't want to say almost. That's not fair. I can't statistically say so, but the news is rarely as harsh on the male student.
Well,
because it's like
the situation is always like, well, was she hot?
Yeah,
it's always the question. Like it doesn't, because
was she?
Well, I don't know. But that's always the question that's asked, right? Like,
well, the
you talk
guys
to
are probably like,
right?
Well, yeah. I mean,
fuck the teacher.
I think we're totally devolving into some totally different discussion. But
there are some.
I don't think we necessarily are that far.
Yeah, I guess
the idea in that case is the act of molestation. Or
a person in power,
or the impropriety.
Yeah, a person who has
there's
power over the other person.
There's a person and a person, and there's power imbalance in between.
I guess in that specific case, yeah, there's definitely that case of if it's the 16-year-old boy, then it's high five, dude, woo!
Yes.
And if it's the other way, then it's you sick, perverted teacher, man. What were you doing?
The phrase in 80s rock was hot for teacher.
Yes.
Yes. That was
Hot
it.
for teacher. There
Yeah.
was a
There was a song,
number.
was there not?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
there's-
Van Halen.
Van Halen. Yeah.
Van Halen.
Is that a,
There was
numerous.
Is
Sound,
I
Dave?
think Dave's turned on right now.
Are you okay?
No, I mean
The
like,
opposite.
Like
I know it.
you.
Okay.
The way you said it. Oh, Van Halen.
That's what I picked up. I think I've.
There might have been a problem.
It was more like, oh, Van Halen.
There.
But yeah, that's an example right there. The idea being not being separate from the perpetrators, because it changes the idea. You if it was student A and teacher B
Specific. Well, I think, that's a different thing happening, though. I think, right? Because that is to say, like, the perpetrator determines the way society looks at the crime, right? But in a sense, I mean, we can kind of look at some of the reasons for that. Where some of these things, like if somebody's doing a shitty thing or saying a shitty thing and we go, that dude is shitty, and we spend a lot of time talking about that, then should we be worried so much about that dude being shitty, or should we be focusing more on the thing that they did or said and how, the reasons behind that from a societal perspective? I don't know.
Oh, definitely you can be critical of an idea.
Is Peter Boghossian a shitty person
Absolutely.
because he believes that gender studies is bullshit?
Not because of that, but because of some of the things he says and some of the things he has said about people who
I guess
support that.
So my question would be like, where does the line? Where's the line? Where it's like, oh, okay, he's not a shitty person. No, still not a shitty. Fuck, that guy's a shitty person. Like that.
It's probably related to the conviction with which they pursue the idea.
Yeah, which would it's like if you say one shitty thing, people go, so you said a shitty thing.
Yeah.
If you say 100 shitty things, well, maybe that's indicative of you being a shitty person.
Is it the degree of the shitty thing? Because, I mean, David Smalley is having a public tantrum right now.
On the daily.
On the daily. And there's a lot of people that are really opposed to what he's about. And there's still some very devoted people that are, I'm going to support you to the end and, no matter what.
But that seems a little dogmatic, right?
Yeah. The other problem is that no person on earth deserves our support unendingly.
Except Sam Harris. Except Sam Harris.
I can't.
Why do you always
I'm a
forget
little
this
frustrated by
ad?
Sam Harris's current issue with Ezra Klein.
Oh my God, it's been so exciting. It's just been like, it's been awkward, really, more than anything.
It's been awkward.
But like, people are like
he
talking about it on my Facebook feed and stuff, and I'm like, oh, we're excited about that.
You're just there with the heart emojis.
So, did you listen to the conversation he had with?
I listened to
what
the
was
original.
your takeaway?
Well, maybe just to summarize for listeners who do not know this, Sam Harris had a guest on his podcast named Charles Murray, who wrote a controversial book in the 90s about intelligence
and race.
Well, apparently there was a chapter on race in the book.
Is this one of the co-authors of the Bell Curve?
The Bell Curve.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So he had him on the podcast about a year ago, and it was an okay podcast, and I think Harris pushed him on thing like, so there's kind of two slants to this. There's the scientific evidence, like in the statistical analysis of actual data, and then there's Murray's opinions on what public policy should come out of that data. Yeah. And I'd say that, so Harris had him on because he basically doesn't believe that any scientific data should not be able to be talked about. It didn't necessarily, I mean, he made it clear in the podcast he didn't necessarily agree with all his policy.
Right. Well, he tried very hard to make it clear that he didn't agree with the policy.
Yeah, and he pushed him quite hard, and like especially on the issue of like, why study this? Like, okay, you can try to find IQ differences between different races, but why study this? And he pushed him quite hard on this, and he didn't really give a good answer, and it is what it is. So fast forward to a year later now, apparently Harris made a snide. Sorry. So after that podcast came out, Vox published an article on criticizing the podcast. So, and then apparently Harris made like a snide comment about to Ezra Klein on Twitter, and it kind of reignited everything. And, I'm kind of asleep to all this, right? And then I get an email because I actually do really like the podcast. So I get emails from samharris.org all the time. And it's like, I'm so mad. I'm publishing my email exchange with Ezra Klein. Here it is. And honestly, I didn't get through it all because it's boring. But
how could you not read it all? At least half of that would be Sam Harris.
I know.
If you
right?
read it, it'd be different.
But it doesn't have his voice.
Didn't read it.
Anyways, so eventually, long and short, they have a podcast that was released this week. And how did I find it? It was interesting. It was really interesting to me because it kind of comes back to this whole. So I think most people listened to it and thought that Ezra Klein sounds reasonable and, especially if you're leftist, very heartfelt in his concern for fairness for people of different races and how they're perceived and how they've been treated, blah, blah, blah. And I think Harris just comes out as surly and argumentative. And it's really it's really funny to me but for me listening to it, I found Klein just so annoying because I can tell he's very Tverskyyan, okay, in his approach to. This is not a jab at Gleb Tversky, but it's an homage to him or whatever. You can tell that Ezra Klein is not neurotypical. However, has had a lot of media training on how to speak, and so no matter how much Harris called him unethical or arguing in bad faith, he never. He was always very genial. But there was one point in particular in the podcast where he. Well, actually, no, he got a little bit angry once. He was like, something like, I've let you speak. Now it's my turn to let you let me speak or something like that. But he also said something. He said, you do blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I should be using I statements, and I'm like, he's been totally trained. This is all bullshit. That's he's like Hillary Clinton level of awkward. Because, you can tell he's not being genuine, but he's just trying to do it in a way that'll appeal to the neurotypicals.
It's the background, right? Like, Sam Harris, he does podcasts, but he's not, a media person. Ezra Klein is a journalist.
Well, Sam Harris is well known for being able to give very biting and funny, debating him. He can very much play to the crowd, and he can kind of land these zingers. But yeah, he's not good at this. If somebody kind of, this is what this podcast did for me, is it shows me that Sam Harris is shit. If somebody mirrors back that politician level of refusing to get upset and just being very genial at everything. So I don't actually agree. I think they were mostly talking past each other, and Klein just didn't. I can agree that he isn't that he isn't acting in good faith because Klein is not stupid, and Harris would say things, and he just wouldn't talk about the thing that he would derail the subject.
They both did that. That's the trouble.
Well, from my perspective, I wanted to hear Klein's answer of all these charts, because I think what you have to listen to is the Extreme Housekeeping Edition first. Okay, so Harris has this hilarious thing at the beginning of every episode where he's like, "Okay, before we have our interview, I have some few housekeeping notes. Well, I'm going to be having a speaking.
I've actually signed up. I got the podcast. I listened when it's interesting.
So he has listen to the Extreme Housekeeping Edition, because that's where he kind of has like a 40-minute rant on what happened and what his opinion of what happened is, and then there's the thing with Klein. And yeah, it's just they are talking past each other, but the thing is, Harris does acknowledge many points in the podcast, like, yeah, I agree with the things you're saying, but you're not addressing the thing that I'm saying that there's no scientific data that should be taboo to talk about, and you're saying how important it is that Black people are given equal rights in this country. And he's like, we're not talking about this again. But he said that several times. And I was very frustrated with that Harris sucks at dealing with a guy like Klein. It
was an interesting conversation in that sense, but I got a different impression. I got the impression that one of them was talking about here's data, and the other one was saying, yeah, but here's data in the societal context. And they're both going, well, but look at my perspective. Well, no, but look at my perspective.
I guess I just don't understand. I guess for me, what is Klein's What is Klein saying? Like, you can't look at certain scientific data if it's in a certain societal context?
He's saying that you have to recognize the impact that it's having, especially when you have somebody like Charles Murray on your podcast.
But I mean, if you listen to the podcast with Charles Murray, it's quite like they really do take pains, to like really.
Well,
like they
more
repeat
so
over
during the interview, but the initial. And actually,
in the podcast, the original podcast
Harris
from a
is
year
flat
ago.
out wrong about the fact that this is scientific consensus. There's so much debate going back and forth right now that there is no like.
I don't know if you're right about that because
consensus.
I don't know if you're right about. I don't personally know. I'm not in that field, but I do know that several prominent people in the field have come to the have defended the scientific portion, anyways, of Murray's work. I mean,
that's the thing too. Like,
I mean, editor of a major journal on on intelligence and other op-eds in the New York Times from other prominent scientists
says like this is the scientific consensus and just nobody wants to talk about it. But
who says that, sir?
Well, Harris said that, and then there's actually scientists who researched this field who disagreed with that statement. Like the Vox article.
But apparently the Vox people are not. Those are the people that are not.
Just
that's
Sarah's
what I'm told.
Rejecting them.
I don't know. I don't think so because there's a series of other articles that don't reference that the editor of Intelligence, which is a journal on the neuroscience of intelligence, so a real journal. The editor in chief of it defended Harris and Murray's conversation, saying this really is the consensus. And there was another article in New York Times. Sorry, I can give you the articles for the show notes, but there was another one recently in New York Times that also defended the science. Now, what policy should come out of that is a totally different kettle of fish.
Absolutely, and I think that's where the conversation was missing. Like, and I do think that there is something to be said about, like, there is still a scientific debate going on whether or not racial IQ levels are a relevant thing to discuss, because there's context that determines those things as well.
Social scientists would tell you IQ is bullshit.
Yeah.
For the most part. That's what we think. So
yeah, there's factors to the relevance. It's kind of like going to the shitty part of town and the good part of town and noting who has better cars.
So I guess the argument that neuroscientists would make is that if what is the metric that they use for IQ? They call it not Q. There's a letter for it. Is it Q? Or anyways, there's whatever metric they use for that correlates with all sorts of positive, like you are more likely to make more money and have a better job and have more happiness in your life and blah blah. It correlates with all sorts of things. So that's what they would argue, that it implies that there is a strong.
But that's a societal measure of value, though, right? Like, that's not. Intelligence isn't necessarily dictated by success, right? Like those two things aren't correlated, if that makes sense. Like, it's not. How do I say that?
But that's what they think the data shows.
I think that the IQ may or may not play a role in outcome, but there's also other inputs, right?
Yeah.
There's other factors that play roles in that.
I'm not an expert in this field at all. I wouldn't. I'm
not an expert either, but I did study this a bit in university. The big thing. The biggest thing is the culturally dependent factors of IQ. It's way too culturally dependent to be an accurate measure of intelligence. Maybe if everybody was born in the same monotonous culture with the same language, with the same regional variant or same regional identity, or like if everything was the same across the board, maybe then it could be an accurate measure. But I think there's just too many confounding variables, culturally speaking.
I think that's part of the conversation that was missing between Klein and Harris, is this discussion of, or even Murray and Harris was necessarily this discussion of multiple factors that influence outcomes rather than just this IQ.
So my understanding, and I've not looked into this in journals, so my understanding is that scientists have actually, I don't know how, but they think that they have isolated these cultural influences, whatever. Well, apparently, I don't know exactly, but I'm told that they think they might, that the consensus is that's what they were actually arguing. That's what Harris and Murray and editor of Intelligence were arguing, is that these aren't it's not a thing. Now, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't shoot the messenger. That's what they were saying.
I'm of the opinion that
that's not my field.
I'm of the opinion that they are simply wrong about that, because even the test itself has often been recognized as being culturally and.
I've heard that argument before, but I'm telling you that they said that argument is wrong. Straight.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it's wrong or not, but I'm telling you that's what they said.
Physical sciences people probably would say that, though.
I think that's the issue. Flynn, or not Flynn, that Klein did mention things like that when he was talking to Harris. Was that
it's kind of a weird discussion, really, because like two non-experts in the field arguing about the data. It's very hard. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't listened to the podcast, but it's two non-experts fighting over something they kind of know about, and yet it's their egos not letting each other.
Right.
It wasn't.
Yeah, it very much was more about the egos of the people involved than the actual
To me, it was interesting from just that level of being like, of how all his media training, I mean, Ezra Klein handled Harris and made him look really bad.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what would be interesting?
I thought that was interesting.
We could bring a social scientist on and have them, like, this is an interesting question. I'm curious about it, like, about the actual data. Like, I know I've seen data before, but I'm not, that's not what I do every day. I'm not an expert at that, so.
That wouldn't hurt.
I find it interesting too that I didn't listen to the podcast myself. I was more listening to the opinions of people that had listened to the podcast, and the people that previously supported Klein's position and previously supported Harris's position continued to support their respective positions.
Minds weren't changed?
Minds weren't changed. It was kind of like the ham nye debate all over again.
I was reading some of Harris's fans on Facebook, and it seemed to me like some of them had been pushed away from Harris. Like, some people were reinforced, but it did seem like some people were expressing, I'm going to have to think about whether I watch this or listen to this podcast anymore.
Is that right?
Yeah, I definitely saw a few comments like that. I don't know how widespread it is, but yeah, Klein really didn't make him look good. Or Harris did not come out good on that. Which is not to say that I disagree with what he said, and I was personally swayed, but I thought it was really interesting that Klein sort of owned him in this sort of context where making snide smart, because that's what Harris does, right? He's really good at making like biting criticisms, and if somebody will engage with him on that level, like he can really make them look bad. But if you pull a Hillary Clinton on him, you could make Harris look really bad.
Well, and the thing is, when he sparred with Ben Affleck on,
it's very Affleckian. It was so Affleckian. It was exactly the same. But it was the same thing,
though, because Harris seemed so unflappable.
Well,
he wasn't upset. Like, Harris wasn't upset in this podcast. He wasn't upset. It's just that he didn't.
But he did get riled up and he admitted it, that he was pissed off.
In previous, not on the podcast, I wouldn't say, but like that they recorded together. He definitely admitted he got angry before. But it was like that same sort of like both. Ben Affleck and Ezra Klein have that same sort of moral righteousness on their side when they argue with him, that, like a naive listening or watching of it just kind of makes you side with them, just because like they're.
I didn't side with Ben Affleck, though. I did not side with Ben Affleck. I sided with Sam Harris.
Can you see where Affleck was coming from, though? He was just trying to
actually now I can.
I don't know.
He was just trying to protect the, against bigotry and blah, blah, blah. You could see where his liberal moralism was coming, and he was just trying to be a good person. I think both of them are.
Something I find interesting is the idea that Sam Harris isn't righteously indignant. Like, he imagines himself as immune to bias.
Yes.
As though he himself has.
He never says that. He says specifically
that he did say that.
He's transcended bias.
He did say that. He said that.
No, he denied that certain things.
He's not affected by this bias that is affecting Ezra Klein.
I know I've heard him say that that he has bias before. I know I've heard him say that, but
he very much
Anyway.
And he did use that same kind of idea, like, you're righteous about your cause, and I'm just defending the poor Charles Murray who was villainized by people on the left. Except it's the same. It's the other side of the coin, right? Like, they are both the same on the same coin. They are the same.
It was interesting. It was interesting. Another podcast that's maybe even better than this one to listen to if you really want to hear what happens when Sam Harris has this kind of conversation is it's like number 32 or something like that. It's like he titled it the best podcast ever, sarcastically.
Miriam Namazi?
No, it's with Omar Aziz.
Okay.
He's a Canadian. Very left leaning, and he wrote a kind of an article, a scathing article about him, I think, in Salon. Okay. Anyways, it is an awkward as hell conversation. Some people, you either love it or you hate it. I loved it. I relished in it. I was just, it's so awkward, and I'm just like, I don't know. But you can totally see how and you can see how they both think they're right, and it's just fascinating. Yeah. It's fascinating. I don't agree with everything Sam Harris says. I just like it. Whatever.
That's a good way to think about separating the person from the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because
I know a lot of people really, really don't like Sam Harris. And a lot of it is because they view him, not specifically because of Charles Murray, but because that feeds their narrative about him as this right-leaning type person who supports race realism.
I think I'm the opposite kind of personality. I just tend to take people like, for example, this is totally a different topic, but like when that accident happened a week ago and all those hockey players from Humboldt were killed in that bus accident here in Saskatchewan, when Donald Trump tweeted out sympathies, I was like, wow, he did something presidential. I was like, wow, I was shocked, but I approved this message. This is a Donald Trump tweet. I can actually. And maybe he didn't do it personally, and some aide told him, and blah, 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 whatever. But I'm just saying it was an actual presidential thing to do. And I was like, holy shit. And I, a little bit of forgiveness came in my heart for him. And I'm bad for that. I'm really,
you might be a bit too kind to people who.
I am. And I'm very easily.
He didn't tweet anything when all those kids drove off a cliff in India. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Or when that plane crashed with hundreds of people.
I'm just saying. Anyway, I'm very susceptible to more like what people like. I don't know the things they do rather than saying this person's horrible forever and I'm going to believe that forever. Like that's just me. That's how my personality is. So
Trump, however, is a pretty safe bet.
And even still with Trump, I was with the Humboldt thing. I was just like, oh, that's
to be honest. When I first saw it, I kind of went, okay, you get 0.0001 point.
Right. He did.
Yeah. And of course, I have people on my Facebook feed that were like, I'm retweeting this because Trump responded before Trudeau. Fuck Trudeau. It's like,
get out of here.
Trudeau showed up.
Trudeau might actually have something better to do.
And Trudeau actually went to Saskatoon and visited
Sorry, Trudeau's not on Twitter all day.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Anyway, no. Okay, anyway. So, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and actually Lachlan had a point about the response to the Broncos crash versus the response to the India crash. And but we kind of got to cut this short. So we don't have time to talk about that.
All right.
Sorry, Lachlan.
Sorry, Lachlan. We will have to maybe try that another time if it's still topical.
Oh, it will be.
I have a feeling it will be.
Knowing Saskatchewan, it will be. All right. For everything else, you can check out the show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com and our website, brainstormblog.net. I'm slowly catching up on show notes on this. I've also been working on the website so that it's more navigation friendly. It's easy to get around on. So check that out. Thanks to our financial supporters, Zach, the Utah Outcasts, Bassett, Will, Aaron, Daryl, Destin Sucks, Lachlan. Destin doesn't suck that much.
We're going to get feedback next week.
Magnus, Michael, Positively Skeptical, Rob, and Stephanie. If you want to join them and help the show grow, then you can do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast. You can also support us by donating to our GoFundMe for the conference at gofundme.com/shift-2-reason-conference-2018.
We got to work on that.
Or you can go buy some stuff, t-shirts and whatnot at tpublic.com/stores/brainstorm brainstorm-podcast-gear. Yes, I know. That's a million slashes and dashes. That's why you go to the show notes. You can join us every second week when we broadcast live on brainstormradio.net. Our next show is on April 27th, and our guest will be Ian Harris, skeptical comedian. Thanks to Kevin and Company. I'm sorry I didn't remember everybody's names. Nancy, Kristen,
and Christina.
There we go. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. You can find more of their stuff at leftatthevalley.com. Check out the episode of that show I was on. That's a few months ago now, though.
I thought they said that wasn't their best.
Yeah, they didn't say. They did say that was not their best. Thanks, Dave, for intro music. Thanks to Aaron Rabbi from the Embrace the Void podcast for doing our new intro voiceover. You can find his stuff at voidpod.com. Thanks to Alex Capper-Murdoch for doing the voiceover for our ads. Thanks to Jason Camo for the outro music. You can find his stuff at aloststateofmind.com. All music played is either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. Remember to give us a rating, write a thumbs up, or a fave on your podcatcher of choice. Join our Facebook group, like our page, follow us on Twitter, share the show, and spread the word. For live listeners, stick around for the after show. I'll stick around anyway. I don't know if anybody else is.
I got to get up earlier than I'd like. So.
It's brainstormafterhours.com and listen to the bonus content after it goes patron only. Or before it goes patron only. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Cory, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.
We just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interactions with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.